to start. So yeah, so today we're doing functions, and basically what a function is in layman's language, it's just um something that does a specific function for you. So for example, like let's say a machine, let's say a posho mill machine. See it ndio ifanye kazi, you have to input mahindi and then itafanya the function of kuisiaga ikoe unga, and then itatupea an output which is unga. So that's how functions work. Yeah, and typically what they are meant to do in our code is to perform specific functions. Yeah, and they reduce redundancy. Like you don't have to keep on repeating something that can be, let's say you want to add um you want to add two numbers so many times. So you don't have to repeat that in your code all the time. You can just create one function and then call that function whenever you need to use it. So I think I should present so that you can start doing it practically. Yeah, and I hope everyone has gotten uh, an understanding of what functions are. So, okay. So we can start by knowing how do we actually write functions in Dart. So let me just call it function one dot Dart. So first of all, we have to, whenever we write code, we have to start with void main. I hope you guys know that. Yeah, and I hope, by the way, I didn't even ask. I hope, Chia, that you are with us, like you've been with, you understand whatever we are doing, and you have everything downloaded and set.
Yeah, I installed the. Well, okay. I was getting an installation after the last session.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So we can continue, right? Okay, I think we can continue. So, let me give an example of a function. For example, void. Let's call our function greet, and then um, give it a code where it should print hello. Oh, sorry. So this is a function called greet, and what it should do is print hello world. So whenever we write a function, we have to call it. So so we are going to call it. When you call it, it will do whatever you've told it to do. Yeah. So for example, if you want not to call it, oh, sorry. If you were not to call it, the code wouldn't have done anything. Simona like ijaleta anything. Sorry, this is what I've been doing, and I think I can delete. I don't know. I don't know how to start a new terminal. Let me start a new terminal. Okay. But yeah, it won't do anything because you haven't called the function. But when you call it, yeah, it prints hello world over here. So yeah, so that's what it typically does. And as you can see here, the syntax for writing a function is you have to start with the return type. Let me write it down for you guys. So you have to start with the return type and then the name of the function. So let's just call it function name, and then brackets, then curly braces, and then you give it the code you want to give it. Then yeah, and then whatever you can return whatever you want to return, or you can print whatever you want to print. Yeah, you can print. Yeah, and that's typically that's the syntax for writing a function. So you have to start with the return type. The return type just means what is the data type of whatever you want to return. So if you want to return maybe an integer, you have to start with int. If you're returning um if you're okay if you're returning any other type of, what do you call it, yeah, any other type of that data type, you have to begin with it. So for example, we can create a function that maybe adds two values. So so here we're going to use the data type int, and then let's call this function add. So yeah, so in this function we want it to add two integers. So we can name our we can, yeah, name our two integers by creating variables. So for here, for example, we can call it int a, and then you can give it a value 10. You can also call int b and give it a value 15. So to get the sum, we can say int sum will be equal to 10 plus 15. So once we write our code, we have to return something or print something. So we can decide to put the print, yeah, the print, and make it return the value of sum, right? Then what we'll do is call the function. We have to call the function. So you can just say add, and since we are here, and we can now run the code and see what it will give us. Oh, mbona nimeandika 10 plus 15, nafaa ikuwe a plus b, sorry, a plus b. Yeah, so let's see what this will give us. Wait, where are we having an error? Is this an error? I don't know why we are having an error here, but let's try and run our code. Oh, I think, okay, I think probably it's because I have given a print function over here instead of returning a value that is an integer. So let's just use return sum. So when we return sum and call the function, it won't it won't um, it won't give us any value since we are not printing it out. I hope sija wachanganya. So we have to print it out. So we can just say print, and then you can call the function inside the print, but inside the print function. I mean inside the print, yeah. So over here we're calling the function so that it can return the sum. So whatever will be printed will be the sum. I hope that makes sense. Let me run so that you can see if you, yeah. So it gives us 25, and that's typically our sum. So I hope it makes sense, everyone, right? Yeah, I hope so. I hope kila mtu anaelewa. In case mtu haelewi, you can just raise your hand or open the mic or just give a chat. Yeah, so that's what functions do, and there are so there are so many ways in which you can write functions. For example, in this function, we have given our we have already pre predetermined ama we have already given out our A and our B. So kuna mtu labda unaweza taka ku change your values of A or B outside the function, since this function can be used so many other times. So we can decide to change how it is so that we can be able to reuse it. So for example, we can create another function called int. Let's name it add2. So um, so for add2, we can decide to use parameters. So basically what a parameter is a variable that is defined inside this parenthesis. Yeah. Wesley is asking, why do we return sum and again print add? Oh, so when we are coding the return function, I think Stanley had explained the return whatever, but the return just gives out the when you're writing the function, like the function that you've already written, add, um, it and we've already gotten the sum. Once we get that and we don't return, the function won't give us anything. So we have to return for it to give us something. We have to return for it to give us something. So um, this function does everything, and then it returns one thing, the sum only. So when we print, it will when we print and then we call the function inside the print, it will print whatever we have returned, if that makes sense. I hope it makes sense. The return just tells the function what am I supposed to give out, so it gives out the sum. And the reason why, yes, Stanley.
You can just finish, then I'll give an add-on.
Oh, okay. So the return typically tells the function this is the output you're supposed to give out to the users. And you can the reason why when I used print inside the function add, the reason why ilikata ikaleta an error is because we had already given the return type of the function as integer. So the function already knows I'm supposed to return an integer, but then I hadn't given the return. I hadn't given the return as sum. I had just printed it out, and when you don't give the function a return, it won't know what I'm supposed to output. So that's why it's given us an error. So that's why when you use int, you're supposed to return so that it knows this is the output I'm supposed to give out. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. Um, Wesley.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, thank you. So Stanley, you want to add something?
Oh yeah, but looks like you had already explained it all. But just for a better and simple understanding, the return statement, we use it in a function to either send a result back to the place where the function was called, okay, or we can also use it to stop execution of the function immediately. But optionally, um, the return no value in void functions, we use just return alone. So if you look in the code that Patricia has written, you see she has specified the add function, and then she has given the she has assigned values to variables and the data types, okay? And then down there she's coming and saying return sum. So that return sum is going to return, it is going to give back the sum of the values that have been described on top there, okay? When you go down there where she's written print add, I think now Wesley Dan was asking why print and add at the same time. So the the print basically just prints out the output to our console, but the add, uh, its work there basically has been called. You remember it has a function, so we are calling it, okay? And when we call it, there is something it's supposed to return. So the values that it is returning are the ones which have been described on top there, that A is equals to 10 and B is equals to 15. That description is contained inside the add function. So when we call the add function, it is going to do for us the calculation, or rather the mathematical operation. And then once it returns the values, that is A plus B, then we print out the output to the console using the print keyword, or rather print function. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Stanley. I hope it's clearer now. Yeah, so the return just basically gives the result that the function gets after it has done whatever it is doing or after it finishes running. Yeah, so I think we can continue. Yeah, so um, we were we were to start on parameters and arguments. So a parameter is okay. Let me write it out. A parameter is basically what is in the parentheses. Sorry. Yeah. So whatever is it. So okay. Let me start again. So we were looking at other ways in which we can create a function, and since we say that a function can be reused many times, and we may not want to have our values as 10 and 15. Maybe we want to keep on changing the values. We can use parameters so that we can pass our values or pass the value that we want to pass so that the function can execute it can execute whatever we want it to execute. So so we are going to pass parameters over here in the brackets. Yeah. So parameters are basically variables that we will define later. So for example, here we can say int a and int b. Okay, let's use other int num1 and int num2. So basically, we are telling our function that we want you to add num1 and num2 inside this function. So we can just, instead of having so much code, we can just return um, num1 plus num2. We can also do this instead of making other writing long code, you can just return and then add these two integers over here. So this function will take whatever we give it as num1 and will take whatever we give it as num2, and it will return the sum, which is num1 plus num2. So once we do that, we're supposed to call our function. And over here, when we are calling it, we're going to pass whatever values we have. And that's where we bring the term arguments. These are the actual values that we want the function to use. So these are the actual values that we want the functions to use, and these arguments will just come here and take the parameter. So for example, when you give the value 10 as num1 and the value 20 as num2, num1 will take the value 10 and that's what will be returned in the sum, and num2 will take the value 20 and then they will be added and returned. Yeah, so let's do it practically for you guys to see. So we can create another variable and call it int sum1, and then for this sum1 we want it to give the values that this function has given. Okay, so we should call the function and pass the arguments, and yeah, we're going to place the arguments, the actual values we want. Since we had already described the data type of the argument we're going to write, we don't have to do that again. So since we know it's already an integer, we can just write 20. That will be num1. And then we can write 30 as num2. And yeah, so our sum1 will take the value that will be returned over here from the function of add2 once it gets the arguments 20 and 30. So typically what this function will do, it will come and say, since num1 is 20, itachukua 20 plus 30 ilete 50. So that's what we expect it to do. So we are going to, whenever you want to see something in your terminal, you have to print it. So we are going to print, let's just print what do we call it? Yeah, we can print a string and say the sum is, and since it's a what do we call it? We're going to call the okay. Yeah, I'm going to call the variable sum1 inside this string. Yeah, so let's see what will happen once we do this. So as you can see, it gives us the sum, which is 50. So I hope it makes sense. Yeah. So we've seen that parameters are whatever whatever we want our function to use. we're going to define them in the brackets, and that's what parameters are. Okay, Wesley, I think you have a question. Why are we adding the numbers? What will be the essence of the variable names? Why are we adding the numbers? What will be the essence of the variable names? Okay, I don't know what you mean, but can you please?
hiyo yenye umeclose hapo juu,
Mm-hmm.
ama ulikuwa unatumia tu kuexplain
Gani hiyo?
yenye umeandika hapo int add2 ukaopen num1 num2 then ukareturn then ukaclose then ukakuja huku chini ndo ukaanza tena sum1.
Oh, unaweza amua pia unini instead ya nimetumia someone ndio niweze kuiprint na ndio niweze kuicall ama inaitwaje, like ndio niweze kuprint using that variable kwa the print function kwa hiyo string. So okay, let me start again. So the reason why we are creating someone ni juu tunataka hii someone itake the value yenye itakuwa returned kwa hii function, na kwa hii function yetu tumesema lazima tuweke the juu sisi tumeshaambia the function sisi ndio tunajiekea, lazima ukicall hii function lazima uipe the values. So typically someone hapa inachukua the value yenye hii add2 inatupea. So add2 so ukicall add2 lazima uipe value zenye unataka kuipea, since already umeshazidescribe hapa. So tutaipea num1 kama 20 na num2 kama 30. I hope ina make sense. Sijui kama mtu anaweza itumia hapa, sijaijaribu, but let's see. I don't really think it can work. I don't really know, but let's try it out and see. But I don't think it will work inside the print function, unless maybe use it outside.
Yeah.
Which I'm not really sure it can work. Okay, let's try and too many positional arguments.
Na come after the speech marks.
Pardon?
So I think unafaa uweke comma after the speech marks ndo you create a space between the string and the other nini.
Oh, let's try it out. Bado inaleta error.
Ni kama ita work.
Yeah, so ni better ukicreate another variable ndio uipe hiyo value yenye unataka, so that tuweze kuprint out easily.
Okay.
Yeah. So I hope iko clear, and I hope everyone else is with us. Favored, I think you joined us a bit late. So what we are doing is we are doing functions, and tumesema functions are blocks of code that perform a specific task. So that's what we are trying to learn over here. Na tulikuwa tumesema that this is the syntax for creating a function. You have to start with the return type, and then the name of that function, then brackets, and then curly braces. And inside the curly braces, you have to give the code you want, and you have to return a value. Yeah. So for example, kama hii void greet ilikuwa ina print out hello world. Now you have to call the function after you define it. So ndio maana tumesema greet into bracket and then into brackets alafu yeah, so it will give us hello world in the terminal. Yeah, that's what we have done so far. Eh, so that was just an explanation on parameters and arguments. So tumesema parameters ni the whatever we want to, since we want our function to use specific values, we have to define the type of values we want it to use. That's why we're using int num1 and int num2, and then we're going to pass our arguments so that these arguments will be used by these parameters. So num1 will take the value 20, num2 will take the value 30, and then this function will just return num1 plus num2, which is 50. So I hope mpaka hapo tumeelewa venye parameters na values zina work. It's not so hard. So we can try another example. So we're going to use void. Void typically means that whatever we're not returning any data type. We're just returning, maybe we're just printing something. So void inamaanisha ni nitwaje? It's not a data type, it's just a null value, if that makes sense. So let's just see from my example. For example, we can just use we can make a function that will introduce someone. For example, okay, so typically it will print my name is, and I am maybe how many years old. So what we want to do, since we want to define our values, we're going to write we're going to pass parameters. Sorry, we're going to pass parameters inside this function. So that's why we're going to put a string and call it name. And then we also want to print out the age. So we are going to use int age. So this function will take the name and the age, and it will print out my name is $sign name, and I am $sign age years old. So okay, this function has parameters string name and int age. So we're going to give it a name and an age whenever we're going to use it. And what this function will do is that it will print out my name is, so it will take this name over here that we've passed, and it will use it as the value over here. And also the age, it will take whatever we give it and use it as the age over here. So since we have already defined whatever our function is, we have to call it. So we can call the function by saying introduce the name of the function, and then as you can see, you're already guided over here. So for the first part, you're going to define the name. So let's say the name is, let me just use my name, Patricia, and the age, since the age is int, we're going to use an int data type, which is just numbers. So let's just say 13. So this function will take the string name, which is Patricia, and the int age, which is 13, and it will print out my name is, and I am 13 years old. So let's see if this will work. Yeah, so that's exactly what it has done. My name is Patricia and I'm 13 years old. So I hope sasa ina make more sense, na I hope kila mtu anafuatilia. In case you think I'm going too fast or you don't understand anything, you can just drop a chat. Yeah, so we can also let's say unataka kupea a function. Okay, let's just do it practically. Okay. So for example, we want this function to, let's say, what do you want this function to do? Let's just call it grid 2. Ama umetumia grid sana. Let's call it funny. And what you want this function to do, you want it to print out. You want it to print out something. So, but okay, you want it to, you want to give the, you want to give parameters so that whoever is running this code can give it a name. Let's say for example we just want to use string name. So acha tuniandike the whole function kwanza. So $sign name is so funny. So tunataka kupeana a name ndio wa print out that name is so funny. But then since unaweza taka like kukuwe na a default name ama unaweza taka we mwenyewe state. So kama hapa tunaita whatever I want to explain inaitwa optional parameters. This is where you want that to be a default. You want that to be a default value so that just in case someone hasn't given whatever they want to give as the name, it will just take up the default. So that's what I want to explain. Okay, Chia, I'll help you out. Just let me just finish explaining this and then I'll get back to you. So, okay, so I was explaining optional parameters. Optional parameters is where you want there to be a default value so that in case you don't want to give a value for that parameter, it can take up the default that you've given it. So instead of saying string, of just passing string name, you should use you should use square brackets inside the, okay, not this. You should use square brackets inside the parentheses and give the default value. So let's say string name is equals to let's say face. So using square brackets tells the code that we want the default for this function to be face. So just in case I call the function and I don't give it a value, the default to just be face is so funny. So let's see how this works. So you can just call the function, and for the first one we won't give it a parameter. Let's call it again, and sorry, we won't give it an argument. So let's call it again and now give it an argument. So let's say we want to use maybe Kim. So let's see what this function will do for both cases. So as you can see, hii ya kwanza inasema Faith is so funny. Juu hatukupass any argument, the function just took the default that you had given it. Ikasema Faith is so funny. But the other one, since you passed an argument, Kim, itachukua whatever we passed. So hii hapa, this is the way in which you're going to give your code a default value, just in case you don't want to pass another argument, to pass an argument when you're calling the function. Yeah, so that's basically it. So hapo unafaa tujue for optional parameters you use square brackets. Yeah, so I hope that makes sense. So Chia, you were saying you have some errors. We're trying to run the previous function. Okay, so this function for introduce.
No, actually, the one for adding the numbers.
Or the one for adding the numbers, the add to one.
Yes.
Also for this umeiandika like the way nimeiandika. Umeandika
Yeah.
int add 2 and then ukapass the parameters int num1, int num2.
Yeah.
Turn. Na pia
It's saying, okay, I tried to look up the error on ChatGPT, and it told me to import some. Okay, I don't know what these are, but it told me to import .io, .math, and .convert, but it's still not running.
yeah. Sijui. Ama ni hii hadi mi sijaandika hii part of the okay, mi sijui imekuja aje by default, but you can try adding this part of the code.
So,
I think maybe Stanley can explain to us what that import does.
oh,
I'm not
it's
sure.
working now, but yeah, I can explain.
Oh, okay. So before that, Favored, you have a question or something?
It's not a question.
Mm-hmm.
It's a contribution.
Yeah.
Dan had asked what is the essence of the variable names.
Oh, for this. Oh, in add to ama.
Yeah, in add to.
Okay, let me explain it again.
I'm the one who wants to explain. Sorry.
Oh, you're the one. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
So then the essence of
Yeah.
creating another variable called sum1, it's to make the code neat. We can also use the function. Can I present? I show you something.
Yeah, you can. Let me stop sharing. Yeah.
The screen. I'm using an online compiler. Do you see line 6?
Yeah, we can see it.
We can also use the function to write the print, but the other way, using the variable sum, it makes it neat.
Okay, thank you. I hope it's more clearer. Yeah, it does make it neater, and inasaidia ndio uweze kuipass as a variable ukiprint out. Thank you so much, Favored.
Okay.
Yeah. So um so I think Stanley, you can try and explain the import part of it. I didn't even know you have to import. I think inakujanga automatically, but yeah, you can explain. Stanley, can you hear me?
Yeah, just a second. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay, so you don't really need to import it because that's a library, and with this simple functionality, we necessarily don't have to import anything. Yeah, so it should just run normally. So that's why I had asked if she can share screen so that we can see where the problem is exactly, so that we can know. But I think it has run. Right now, we are not tackling libraries, so any code that will be running, so far, we don't need any libraries. You can still include them, but right now it is not necessary. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Um, I think I don't understand your message. You can interpolate the printout. I don't really get what you mean by that.
Okay. You remember, like each time we are using the $sign, we are passing the values that has been assigned to a variable inside the string output.
Yeah.
Yes. For example, let me read your code.
Oh, let me.
Print. Exactly. You see, the sum is the print, line 30.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is the product that is going to be output there is the value that has been assigned to the variable sum1. So we
Oh,
are expecting a 60 there. So that's what Favored was trying to elaborate when he was demonstrating that yes, we can still do it. So what you do, you use the $sign and then you pass out the function, call the function inside the printout, and it will be able to do that.
I think we had tried it. Oh, let's try it out and see if it will work.
Use curly braces also.
Curly braces
Yeah.
inside the.
Close the function using curly braces, then $sign outside the curly braces.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, okay. I think now it makes more sense. Let's try it out. I think it will still okay. Let's give it other values so that we can see if it will work the same way. Yeah, the sum is 100, so it works. Thank you. I didn't know the part where you're supposed to put curly braces. I think now we can continue. So I hope hii part ya optional parameters iko clear as we continue. So kuna named, okay, so kuna another way of passing parameters. Already tumeona kuna the first way of passing parameters tumeiona hapa, yenye tu unapeana the data type and the name of the parameter, the data type and the name of the parameter, and then you use it over here. Then we've also seen this other way of passing parameters where we want it to have a default and we can also use our own value that we want to pass. So yeah, that's why we have two of them. The first one takes the default. The second one, we have given it an argument Kim. So the argument will be used here. Kim is too funny. Yeah. So now we're going to name parameters. And here, let me do it practically for you guys to understand. So we can name this function describe. And okay, we want this function to also print out the name and the age. So let's put the print function. So we want it to print out the name and the age. Higher. So what we want it to do in this case, we want it to have one of the parameters. We want one of the parameters to be predefined by us, and the other parameter to be able to be changed by the user, or it to be changed outside the function. For example, let's say we want to define the name only. So we can say we require, so required is supposed to be caps. No, it's supposed to be small letter. Yeah, required string name, and then int age is equals to 25. So here, what this code will typically do, what this code is supposed to do, it's supposed to take this parameter string name, but since we haven't predefined it, we're going to take it from wherever we are calling it. So when we call the function, we're going to pass an argument of the string name, and then here we want our default age to be 25. Yeah. So let's see what this will do. So we're going to add the variable's name and the variable age. Then we're going to call this function describe. And the name we're going to use, let's say Ian. Okay, since it's a string, we have to use double quotes. Yeah. So let's see since we've already predefined our age, hatupewi the option of changing the age, but I think you still can. But let's first try it out. So as you can see, inachukua the name Ian na inapea the default age, which is 25. So yeah, you can also choose to do this in case you want one of your parameters to be predefined ama ikuwe na a default value. and the other one unataka isikue. But pia ukitaka kupea age, okay, kama pia unataka kuipea an age, unaweza ipea age 20 for example. So it will take whatever you pass as an argument. But if you don't pass anything as an argument for age, it will take the default, which is 25. So let's see. So sinaona kwa the second one, the second output imetupea name Ian, age 20. So yeah, so hii inatumika kama unataka moja ikuwe na a default value and the other one has to be there. That's why we're using the required. Yeah. So I hope it makes sense. So for this named parameters, we're going to use curly braces. Yeah. So I hope it makes sense. Kama kuna mtu akona swali, you can just, ama any error, ama any concern, you can just drop a message. Yeah. So I think we can continue. So there's another type of function called an anonymous function. Anonymous. I think you guys know what do you guys know what is the meaning of anonymous? Like, what does anonymous mean? Anyone? Can anyone tell us what they understand by anonymous? Anybody? But I think you guys know that anonymous just means someone who's not okay, yeah, unveiled, meaning that we don't know the person, ama we don't really know them. So an anonymous function is typically just a function without a name. And what I mean by a function without a name is we don't really name the function. We just assign it to a certain variable and use and just, okay, let me give it practically. For example, we can say, let's name this function, say hello. Need to really know. Okay, say hello. And we want this variable to have this function. So now this is an anonymous function since this function doesn't have a name. So nakumbuka tulisema we're supposed to write the function name before the brackets. But here, since it's an anonymous function, we are not naming the function. We're just assigning it to the variable directly. So we can just give it the whatever. Yeah, we can just say hello. Yeah, hello dunia. So yeah, so what this function, okay, this function is an anonymous function, as we have said. And since it's a variable, and it's not, for a function, you can just not write you don't have to use a semicolon. But since it's a variable, it's okay, we can just call it a variable. Since it uses this whatever, this format, you have to use a semicolon. So this is how we write an anonymous function. We just give it we assign it directly to a variable and write the code inside. So let's see what this will do. Let us see what this will do. So for whatever function we write, we have to call the function. And since this is an anonymous function, it's also a function. So you have to call it. So we'll just say hello and give the brackets. So let's run this and see what will happen. So it prints out hello dunia. So even your even inafanya kazi. Hope ina make sense. That's how we write anonymous function. Yeah, and I think you can also maybe add, okay, you can also use you can, okay, as an assignment, since time is running out, you can go and use an anonymous function to um, find the area of a rectangle. Yeah, use the anonymous function syntax to find the area of a rectangle. Yeah, so tutaangalia next time, so you guys should try and do it. So we can continue, and yeah, there's also another way of writing functions. You can use the arrow function way. So arrow function, just instead of us having to write the brackets, the curly braces, we just use an arrow. And this is what I mean by it. So for example, int multiply, let's say we wanted to multiply int a and int b. So this is just a shorter way of writing functions. So what this function does, it is that it multiplies int a and int b using this code a asterisk b. So yeah, but as you know, we have to call the function. But since hapa hatu return, unaona ukitumia arrow function, like how return anything ama so lazima uiweke inside a print whatever, print out. So you can just call the function inside there and say multiply maybe 4 and 5. Yeah, so let's see how this goes. Naona imefanya ikaleta 20. So yeah, that's what it does. It's just a simpler way of writing functions. This arrow is made by an equal sign and a nitwaje, sijui kama ni forward arrow, but hiyo yenye tunatumianga kama greater than kwa so that's how we create that arrow. So hii inasaidia ndio kama tuseme you just want to write a small function like this one, you don't have to go ahead and write all this. You can just use the arrow function to make your work simpler. And I think now this will be the last thing I go through in functions. Yeah, so we're going to look at variable scope. So kwa si tulisema tukiandika variables tunaziandika hivi, let's say int mbona sijui niandike, okay, int num4 tuseme 20. So unaona nimetoka kwa sorry guys, nilikuwa nimetoka kwa bracket in the last bracket, like in your bracket ya void main ya huku juu, na ukitoka nje ya void main you're just doing nothing, because tulisema all our code should be inside void main. So hapa nimesema nimeandika name a variable num4 and I've assigned it a value 20. Okay, so we can just create a random function. Let's say void give num. Let's call our function void give num. So we want this function to print out this num4. So we want it to print let's see what it does. So see, imefanya kweli? I think imefanya. I don't really. Oh, okay. Sorry, I hadn't called this function. That's why ilikuwa imeleta 20 ya hii ya multiply, haikuwa imeleta 20 ya hii ya kuprint. So we have to call this function. Yeah. So as you can see, in a print num4 comma 20. So basically this num4 here is a global variable. A global variable is a variable that is it is defined outside a function. Tunaona haiko in any function, like haiko hapa ndani ya num, haiko hapa ndani ya give num. So it has been defined outside the functions ama any function, and it can be called by any function since it's a global variable. So let me try and write it out. Okay. So a global variable tumesema it's defined outside all functions and it can be used anywhere. So can be used anywhere inside the file, inside this file. So it can be used anywhere inside this file. That's a global variable and it has been defined outside all functions, meaning that hakuna function yenye imefungia. I hope that makes sense. So that's why hadi tukikuja tuiprint hapa ina work, inaleta. But then tukikuja hapa tuseme int num, let's say int num5 tuseme ni 33. This variable is inside this function, and a variable that is inside a function inaitwa a local variable. Inaitwa local juu ni local, iko ndani ya function, so it's local to that function. That makes sense. I hope that makes sense. So it's defined inside the function and it can only be used inside the function. So inaweza tumika tu inside this function. So hadi ukikuja uiite huku haitaitikia, ama uite kwa any other function haitaitikia. It can only be used inside this function. So let's see what it does. Num5, sorry. So let's see if it will print out. So tunaona ina print out num5 kama 33. But then tukitaka tuseme tujaribu tu tuone kama inaweza work tukiprint out mahali huku nje. Tuseme tu print num5. Tunaona inaleta an error. Inasema undefined name num5. The reason why ni juu tunajaribu kuita num5 na haiko nje, iko tu ndani ya hii function. So that's exactly why I'm calling this variable scope. The scope, it shows the scope in which a certain variable works. So num5 only works inside the function. It can only work inside the function scope. But this num4 can work outside the function, inside the function, anywhere. It can work anywhere. So that's why tukiweka num4 haileti any error because it's a global variable. It's defined outside all the functions and it can be used anywhere inside the file. But num5 is a local variable since it's defined inside that function and it can only be used inside that function. So it can only be used inside the function give num. So that's why even when you print num4, which is a global variable, it'll work. So I hope it may make sense. And I think nimemalizia ku explain functions. Is there anyone who has an error? Is there anyone who has an error, a question, anything to that needs to be clarified? So tumesoma what functions are. Let me just give a brief recap tukimalizia because I think time imeshaisha. We can't be able to go to collections and whatever, string manipulation. But what we've learned is what functions are. So tumesema these are blocks of code that perform a specific functions and they can be reused anywhere in the code. So that's what a function is. Tumeona the syntax of writing a function. Tukaona we have to return whatever data type we had named the function. So kama ni int, lazima to return the same data type. Ndio maana tuna return sum, which is also an int. So yeah, tumesoma parameters and arguments. Tumesema parameters are whatever we pass inside the function in order to be able to pass our own values. So they are specified in they are defined inside the parentheses. So for example here, int num1 is a parameter and int num2 is a parameter. This just defines whatever values I will want to give to the code. And whatever values I will want to give to the code are called arguments. These are the actual values you want the code to have. So ndio maana hapa tumepeana the actual values which are 70 and 30. So this function will just use int num1 as 70 and int num2 as 30 and return the value we want it to return. So that's what we have gone through. We have also gone through all these optional parameters, named parameters. I hope kila mtu ameelewa how everything goes. Na in case kama kuna mtu ako na swali anaweza uliza. Pia tumeona how to write anonymous functions na nimewapea an assignment for you to make a function that calculates the area of a rectangle. And also we've looked at arrow functions, which is a simpler way of writing functions instead of using this big syntax, this big syntax. We can just use an easier way. Pia tumeona the variable scopes. Tumeona kuna global variable which is defined outside all functions and can be used anywhere inside this file. So hadi tukiita hadi huku juu itaitikia tu juu ni a global variable, but a local variable is defined inside the function and it can only be used inside it. Yeah, so that's just a short recap of what we've done, and I hope it's clear. I hope it's clear. Yeah, and you guys can also go and do more research, more practice, try out different ways, or try out different functions. You can also try and create a function that is called a calculator. You can create a calculator using a function. Unaita tu int calculator, unaipea different codes that it will manipulate when you give it different numbers. You can try out different stuff, but that's basically where I end my section on functions. I hope no one has a question. Yeah, so thank you. I guess I'll now give this opportunity to Stanley in case you have an add-on or anything else to say.
Okay. Before I speak, let us appreciate Patricia for that very beautiful session and instructing. Yeah, we really appreciate. Yeah, nice work, Patricia. So there's much. Thank you guys, first of all, for making time.